friends, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. If this is your first time meeting me, then hi, my name is Marissa Wight, and for today's video, because you guys are so awesome and so kind and supportive, I am going to be sharing more about my ghost stories, my paranormal experiences, and all things of that nature. I would suggest that you go back and watch my first paranormal video. It's the only one that I have up at the moment that is personal to my own story. With that being said, let's just jump right into today's video. So if you've already watched that video, then you already know the big shebang. The big thing that happened to me that totally convinced me that I'm not crazy and that all of these small little paranormal happenings that I've experienced throughout my life are real and valid. So pretty much my entire life, I have been drawn to all things strange and unusual. So it's no surprise that I turned out like this. My entire life, I have had an affinity for anything creepy, anything scary, unexplainable. I've just always been interested in it, and I think it's just honestly in my blood, and still to this day I am very interested. Now, the difference between my outlook on the paranormal now compared to then is that when you're a child, you are an innocent. You're not as afraid because you're not conditioned to be afraid, or at least I wasn't, okay? So these things that happened when I was really young, some of them did not scare me at all, and today as an adult, they would terrify me. So the first ever paranormal experience I can remember, I was probably about 7 years old. I was staying at our babysitter's house with my sister. So our babysitter is a woman who my mom was very close with at the time, and I was staying at her house and I was sleeping downstairs in the spare bedroom, and my sister and her were upstairs. Nobody else was home. It was just me and them, of course. You know, as a child, you want your mommy, you want your parents. You don't want to be somewhere else that's, you know, less familiar to what you're used to. You want your own bed, and that's just how kids are, and I was no exception. So I was staying in this room and I was having a hard time falling asleep because I wasn't in my own bed. I wasn't at home. And so I started to get anxiety and I started to kind of freak out, and I actually contemplated getting up and going upstairs and going and telling her that I want my mom. Before I could actually do that, I heard a voice as if it was standing right next to me say, "Marissa, it's okay, you can go to sleep now." So when I heard this voice as a little 7-year-old child, it didn't scare me, which today that would scare the shit out of me, but as a kid, it didn't really freak me out. I mean, I was a little confused. I'm like, who said that? But I wasn't afraid of it. And so the next day I woke up and I told the woman who was our babysitter that somebody was in my room telling me that it was okay and that I need to go to sleep. And she just kind of looked at me, and her facial expression was, I wouldn't say fearful, but it definitely caught her off guard. And she asked me, was it a man's voice or was it a woman's voice? And I told her it was a man's voice. The look on her face when I told her it was a man's voice, that's when her face instantly changed from intrigued and a little confused to shocked. She was shook. So I went home and just kind of forgot about it. Now, years went by, and more often paranormal things would happen to me and unexplainable things would happen to me. I would discuss them with my mom and my family, and I was discussing this memory with her. When I explained to my mom what had happened, she looked at me and she was like, "Marissa, her son died in that house, and that was his room that you were sleeping in." So I don't know, you guys. I'm not saying that 100% there's a ghost and that's what happened, but I mean, it was an odd thing that happened, and I mean, it's just strange that I have this memory and everything just kind of added up. You know, it was a man's voice. It wasn't scary or malicious or negative. It was more calming than anything at the time for me. And she looked like she was put off by this. You know, most of the time when kids come to adults and they share their little experiences, parents usually just write it off as kids' overactive imagination. But she looked at me like she was bothered, or like she was intrigued, in a sense that she knew there was a possibility that maybe it was her son. That must be why she asked me if it was a man or a woman's voice, and why she reacted the way that she reacted when I said it was a man's voice. So I know that's not that big of a deal. That is the first experience I remember. I actually have another story similar to that one when I'm older as a teenager. My best friend was there with me, and it's crazy, but I'm gonna save that for you guys, so stay tuned. I will save that for you guys. I will bring her on my channel, and I will basically talk about it with her so that she can give you guys her perspective of how it felt to experience a auditory paranormal situation, I guess you could call it, or a disembodied voice. So basically throughout my entire childhood, I was drawn to all of these types of things, and like I said, I wasn't necessarily afraid of them. I was more interested, and that changed as I went into my teenage years for reasons that I explained in my last paranormal storytime video. But for the most part, all the things that happened to me growing up, I thought they were cool and interesting, and it made me so much more curious and made me want to learn more, experiment more. When I say experiment, yes, I did things like EVP sessions, and if you don't know what an EVP session is, it is basically where you use some type of a recording device to speak to spirits, because it's said that their voices, they don't pick up on a frequency that the human ear can pick up. So if you use some type of device, a recording device, it can pick up the frequency, and you can actually listen and hear paranormal or ghost, whatever you want to call it. You can hear their voices. So as a kid, I moved countless times. Again, I explained my upbringing in my previous video, but we bounced around a lot. My mom was a single mom, and she did have a couple relationships where she didn't get treated the best, and so we had bounced around quite a bit, and it was really difficult on our family. I mean, we were back and forth from my grandparents' house to our own house, and it was just a lot. But no matter where we lived, things always happened. So that makes me believe that it wasn't a house. It wasn't just one house. Maybe there's a possibility that something got picked up along the way at one of these houses and just followed us. I don't know. But every single house that we lived in, wherever I stayed, things would happen. One of the more sinister experiences that I had that still really unnerves me to this day, I can still picture it in my head so vividly. I was probably about 10 or 11, and we lived in this really old country home. And it was me and my mom and my sister and her ex-husband, now ex-husband. And me and my sister shared a room, and we had bunk beds. And in our room, we had one of those closets. I call it the Harry Potter closet, because it was one of those closets that has like the triangle shaped door, and it's because it's underneath the staircase. So in our room, if you're laying on our bunk bed, you can look straight ahead and you can see the Harry Potter closet, or the triangle shaped door that has a closet on the inside. That closet freaked me out. It freaked both of us out. We had tons of activity with that closet. There was one of those drawstring lights where you just pull the string and the light bulb would turn on, and that light used to turn on and off by itself all the time. The door had a little latch, and all you had to do was unlatch it to open it, but constantly the door would pop open on its own, close on its own, and we kind of turned, before we were afraid of it, we kind of turned this spot into our little like clubhouse. we strung lights up in there, and we had our posters up, and we had a little stereo, and it was like our little like clubhouse, and we thought it was so cool. And there was a few times that we hung out in there and the lights would just shut off out of nowhere, and it wasn't like the light bulb would just go out. You would hear the click as if somebody pulled the string while we were in there. And so we stopped hanging out in the Harry Potter closet because things like that would happen, or the door would suddenly fly open or closed on its own. And so we just got freaked out. It gave us bad vibes. So we were afraid of that closet after those happenings. Now, I remember laying in my bunk bed, and I'm on the top bunk. My sister's on the bottom bunk. And it was a really dark and stormy night, of course, so fitting. And this scared me because of the thunder and the lightning and the rain and the door being creepy. And I had a bad feeling. And so I peeked my head down underneath my bunk bed to see my sister and see if she's awake, because I was scared and I wanted to talk to her. So I'm like, "Psst, hey, you awake?" And I peek down there and she's not in her bed. I see her bed empty. So then I realized I'm alone in this room, and hell to the no, I'm not gonna be alone in this room with a creepy closet and the thunder and the lightning. Something's about to snatch me up by my hair and drag me down the hallway. So what do? I do what tons of kids do when they get scared because of storms. I got up, climbed down my little ladder, and went to my parents' room. When I went to my mom's room, it was dark in the room, but because of the light from the outside of the window, I could still see that in the bed was my mom and then my stepdad, and in the middle I got a glimpse of my sister. And that pissed me off because I thought, why does she get to sleep in bed with them? Because we were not allowed at this age to sleep in bed with them anymore. We were big girls, we had our own beds in our own room, and so they didn't think it was appropriate for us to be sleeping with them anymore. Even if we were scared, that was just something that they didn't want us to do. And I get it, no tea, no shade. I would want to sleep in my own bed too if I was a parent. Forget that. Kids are freaking dicks when they sleep, punching you in the face and shit. So I walk in the room and it's dimly lit, but I can see my sister's face in between them. And she's smirking at me, just like this sinister smirk, as if she was trying to say like,
ha, I get to sleep in bed with them and you don't.
Like, that's how it came off. She just looked evil. And of course, I freak out. I go up to my mom and I start shaking her. And I'm like, Mom, wake up. And she's like, what? She wakes up and I'm like, move over. I want to sleep in bed with you too. She's like, no. You're too big for that. Go back to your room. You have your own room. There's no reason why you need to sleep in bed with us. It's just a storm. You'll be okay. And I'm like, well, why does she get to sleep in here and I don't? That's not fair. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? And she looks over and looks back at me, and I'm like, why does Jamie get to sleep in here? Jamie's my sister. And my mom turns the bedside light on, and she looks at me and she's like, Jamie's not in here, Marissa. And I look back and she's not in there. She's not in the bed. And I just saw her laying in bed smirking at me. It pissed me off. It got a rise out of me. And I remember being so scared but also so angry. And I was determined to make my way into that bed because she was in there and I wasn't gonna go unless she came back with me. And she was gone. My mom turned the light on and she was gone. So I start freaking out and crying, and she was just there. And of course my mom thinks I'm dreaming or whatever. So she brings me back to my room. We go back to the room, and my sister's in her bunk bed, asleep. She doesn't have the covers pulled over her face or anything like that to where I could have missed her. She's laying there, all sprawled out, snoozing away. I don't know. That is something that just stuck with me because the house was freaky. We had all these weird little things happening. And then that night, I saw her, and then she was gone. And I remember looking in the bed and she wasn't there. That's what got me so heated and so scared. So again, It was weird. I don't have an explanation for it. I was not dreaming. I remember this, and my mom remembers this too. My mom remembers me freaking out and crying and making the biggest deal about it, and my sister was in her bed the whole time. So, yeah. One night, we were both in our rooms, and this is jumping a few years ahead, and we both have homework. We're in our room doing our homework. I'm listening to my music, probably playing my Green Day CDs or something, or my Blink CDs, doing my thing, and my sister's in her room. So our rooms were, because at this time we did have separate rooms, finally, because I was in my preteen years, our rooms were next to each other, and our doors were on the same side of the hallway. So a rule in our house is if you're gonna go into someone's room, you have to knock. You don't just barge in. I mean, obviously my mom being a parent could if she wanted to, but my sister and I had to knock and had to be respectful if we were going into each other's rooms, and so we always knocked. So that wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Well, I heard a knock at my door. I'm sitting on my bed doing my homework, listening to my music, and I didn't want to get up, so I'm just like, what? Come in. And then there's nothing. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Keep going, and I hear again, knock, knock, knock. So then again, I'm like, what? What do you want? Come in. The door is open. We were not allowed to have locks on our doors, so she could have just opened the door if she wanted to, but she didn't. So again, I go back to doing my homework, listening to my music, and it happens again, but this time it's louder. And then I get irritated, and I get up, throw my homework down, and sorry guys, I have a son. His name is Grim. He is a Chinese water dragon, and his cage is right over there, and he's wrestling around hunting his cricket. So if you hear any weird noises, it's not a ghost, it's just my son. So, oh my gosh, he's so cute, guys. Grimmy! I'll try to pull him out at the end of this video and show him to you guys. So anyways, I hear this knocking, and I get up and I just pull the door open, and I'm pissed off, and I go to her door and I fling her door open, and I'm like, why do you keep coming to my room? Why do you keep knocking on my door? You need to knock it off. I was pissed off. And you know, we're sisters and we fight like sisters do. We fought a lot actually growing up. We were dicks to each other. I apologize for all the little fuzzy floaty thingies. I don't know why there's so many like little particles of like, my house is really clean. I'm super OCD, but the dust where I live is like, it's so hard to get rid of. Anyways, I fling the door open and she looks at me like,
Bitch, what are you doing?
and I start yelling at her for coming and knocking on my door. And she's like, get out of my room. I'm not doing anything. Da, da, da. She fully denied knocking on my door, said she wasn't knocking on my door, and to leave her alone. So then I'm like, okay, whatever. She's full of shit. So then I close the door. Now at this time, my mom and her husband at the time were, I believe, outside or on the front porch or something. They were outside, and so they didn't hear us fighting, or else they would have came and put a stop to it. So I went back in my room, I sat back down on my bed, and I go back to doing my homework. And then again, really loud this time, it happens. Boom, boom, boom. And I mean, this was so loud that it like rattled my door. My door was like shaking. So then I get even more upset, and I run to the door and I fling my door open. And at the same exact time that I fling my door open, I look over and I see my sister, and she had just flung her door open, and we're looking at each other. It happened to her door too. So at the same exact time, whatever it was that was knocking on my door and toying with me did it to her door too, and she thought it was me and I thought it was her. We flung our doors open at the same time, and when we made eye contact, we didn't even have to say anything. We both knew that it was neither of us, because that would have been impossible. And my mom and my stepdad were outside. So needless to say, we lost our shit, and we went and screamed and cried to our mom, and she thought that it was just one of us, you know, playing tricks on the other one, and that somehow, some way, we had both like tricked each other, or it was just our imagination. So she just tried to calm us down and not react to freak us out and just kind of, soothe us because we were losing our shit at this point. We were constantly hearing little things that weren't there. We would hear footsteps, knocking noises, whispers, things of that nature that made little happenings like that, like the door knocking, significant because of all of the other things that we were experiencing that were unexplainable. And it was never anything super, super crazy over the top, but it just was like always something, the TV flipping channels on its own or just completely turning off, lights flickering. Now, when it comes to electronics, I never like to assume that it is something paranormal because electronics malfunction, but it just seemed like it was all the time. All the time. Things were just being messed with and malfunctioning, and we were hearing weird things. And I even remember having like sleep paralysis and laying in bed and not being able to move or speak or scream and watching one of my posters be slowly torn off my wall and just float down onto the ground. And I remember being so scared and so freaked out and wanting to scream and wanting to move, but I couldn't move and I couldn't yell. And I was awake. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't dreaming. I was awake because I remember vividly, as soon as I came to and I was able to sit up, I did freak out and I did go and get my mom and I did explain what happened and she talked to me as she did. And it was just like we couldn't catch a break. It was always something. So it got to the point where my mom and her husband at the time started to witness things themselves. I overheard them talking quite a few times, even to the point where people were afraid to come and hang out at our house. My friends, I had sleepovers multiple times, and my friends had experienced things at my slumber parties that were unexplainable. We would be hanging out in my bedroom and we would hear, ruckus coming from the kitchen, and we would come out and cabinets would be open or drawers would be open or the refrigerator would be open when everybody was sleeping. And it was to the point where this is what I was known for was, oh, Marissa has a haunted house or has a ghost following her and her family. I mean, still to this day, I have people, when they hear me talk about this on social media, commenting and saying, I remember this time of your life. I was there. I mean, it wasn't just me experiencing these things without witnesses. People who were involved in my life, all throughout my life, witnessed a ton of these happenings. After the whole door knocking thing, like I said, my mom started to fear things herself, and I would overhear her on the phone talking to my grandma, which is her mom, or her friends about her seeing or hearing weird things too. So I knew that I wasn't crazy. I knew that the things that were happening were valid and real, and that it wasn't just me, it wasn't just my sister. Pretty much anybody who's around us was witnessing these things. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I did stupid things as a kid because I knew this stuff was real, because it was happening. I was so intrigued to go find it, right? So me and my friends would have our own little EVP sessions and try to communicate with spirits. And if you don't know what an EVP session is, it's basically when you use some type of an electronic, such as a phone or a voice recorder, to pick up a frequency that is inaudible to the human ear. So they say that spirits, ghosts, entities, whatever you want to call it, they don't have a voice that can be heard to the human ear. So if you use some type of a device, it can pick up on those frequencies that the human ear cannot pick up on. And then whenever you're done asking questions or whatever, you can go back and play it back, and you can hear sometimes things being answered. And there was so many times that me and my friends would have these little like spirit box or EVP sessions where we would hear things come back. We would hear people, what sounded like people responding to us. And what we even heard one time what sounded like a gunshot. I mean, it was so loud. We were communicating with what we thought was a spirit, and we were getting little simple answers here and there that were kind of hard to hear and understand, but we were having fun with it. And it got to the point where I asked, how did you die? Well, when we played it back, because in real life we heard nothing. When we're sitting there asking these questions with our naked ears, we are not hearing anything. But when we went and played it back, after I asked, how did you die? It sounded like a super loud gunshot. And I mean, even on the device, it was so loud that it was like staticky. And we did not hear that, with our ears sitting there. And so, yeah, there was things happening left and right, and so many that I cannot fit it all into one video, but I wanted to give you guys kind of a taste of some of the things that I experienced in my life that kind of built up into like the big one that really, really validated all of this for me. The older that I got and the more I educated myself on, the spiritual realm, I realized how naive I was. And it started to become more and more scary because I started to understand the real threats that were out there. Now, I don't want to get too deep into religion or anything of that sort, or at least not yet, but I do believe in demons, and I believe that there are dark and evil and negative spirits out there, things that you don't want to mess with. And when you are doing things like playing with a Ouija board, which I can say, surprisingly, I never did, which I would have if I would have gotten my hands on one as a kid, but I just never did. I didn't know anybody that had one, and I never had one. Thank God, because I never played with a Ouija board, but still had some crazy shit happen to me in my life. I didn't need a Ouija board, okay? I already attracted things just enough without one. You don't know what or who is going to come through. You don't know what you're going to attract, you guys. And I don't necessarily believe that I inflicted this upon myself, but I do think that this didn't help. My interest in these things, I think it fueled the fire. I think that naturally I've always been very susceptible. So if you guys did watch my previous video about everything that happened on that really crazy day, then all of these small things will have a little bit more significance to you. Now, there's a ton more, you guys. These are just a few things that I experienced off the top of my head, and it wasn't like I just woke up one day and all this stuff started happening. My entire life, things like this have been happening to me and to the people around me, and it was not scary for a long time, at least not in a bad way, and then it was. My main reason of sharing a little bit more with you guys about some of these smaller experiences that I had is to warn you guys. And if you have kids and you're a parent, you need to keep an eye on your children and keep an eye on what they're doing, especially when it comes to things like this. And like I said, I don't want to push my beliefs on anybody. You don't have to believe in demons. You don't have to believe in any of this. But I'm sharing with you guys what I personally believe. I think that I really made it worse for myself. And the older that I got, the more severe the happenings became, the more intense they became. Once I turned about 13, 14 and up, that's when things started becoming more malicious, darker, scarier, and I will share more with you guys on the next video. In my previous video, I told you guys that I would share with you how I overcame the depression and all of the negativity that these happenings put on me, especially when it hit the climax and got really bad. And I promise you I will. I am going to share that in a later video because I have more stories and more things to share with you guys that led up to that event. And I will let that be my little finale, at least to my own personal paranormal experiences. I plan on interviewing people and bringing them on my channel and having people that I know in my life share their experiences or their point of views if they were somebody who was around during those things in my life. My paranormal story is actually my most viewed and liked video this far, so I don't want to just give you guys all of the full course meal at once. I want to save some for later and keep you guys on your toes, you know? I'm not just gonna give it away like that. You gotta buy me dinner first. You gotta earn it. In all seriousness, I really do appreciate you guys being so kind and genuine and supportive. I feel so much more comfortable than I thought I would sharing this information with you guys. If I can come on here and help somebody or be relatable to somebody who might be dealing with the things that I dealt with, then that's great. Then I'm doing something positive with it. I'm taking something that was very negative and turning it into something positive. And I mentioned this in my last video. If you or someone that you know is struggling with anything paranormal or supernatural and they feel like they just want to talk to somebody to relate to, I will share with you what I did to overcome it, how I dealt with it, and all of those details privately through my email. I will link it below in the description. I would like to wait to share that publicly on here on my channel until we kind of go over all of the other events that happened. But if you would like to hear about it now because you are going through it, I will tell you. I will email you privately and we can have a discussion, and I'll try to help you out and give you as much advice as I can and just let you know that you are not alone. So yeah, I think out of all of those things that I just told you guys about, the one with my sister, when I looked at her, that one for me is the darkest. I remember it like it was yesterday, you guys. The look that she had in her face, it's like it was her, but it wasn't. She looked so dark and like twisted and just different. Now, like I said, I personally believe that demons or dark entities can impersonate people and trick you. That's what they do. They want to trick you and manipulate you. And so I don't know, like I said, I don't want to jump to conclusions. I try to be skeptical before I just assume that, oh, it's a demon or it's a ghost. You know, like that guy from Ancient Aliens, and every single thing he's like, aliens, aliens. I don't want to be like that and be like, demons, ghosts. So I try to be a little bit more skeptical, but like some of this shit, you guys, there's no way of explaining it. And yeah, I will be sharing more with you guys very shortly. Let me know in the comments down below. I really would like to get your guys' feedback. Tell me some of your paranormal experiences. Email me some of your paranormal experiences. If you guys would be open to and willing to let me share some of your stories, feel free to write me. I can do it anonymously, or I can give you a shout out and share on your behalf. So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. I super appreciate it. You guys are so awesome, and I'm just so excited to be here. I'm so excited for all the things that I have planned for this channel. And remember, you are in control. You are in charge, and just make sure that you protect yourself. If you're gonna be dabbling in any of this kind of stuff, guys, please, please, please do not just go out there and mess with things that you do not understand. I promise you it's not a good idea. So, heed my warning. Thank you guys for not calling me batshit crazy. I really appreciate it. Stay spooky, guys. Halloween is almost here. I'm so excited. Let me know what you guys are planning on being for Halloween in the comments below. I'm super, super, super into Halloween, if you can't tell already. I hope that you guys are enjoying spooky season as much as I am, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.